Hello. So this is my review of the N64 Blaster version 2.0 from Retro Stage. So if you've seen other reviews of the Retro Stage N64 Blaster version 2.0, you may be looking at them and looking at my board and going, wait a second, there's some differences here. And that is correct. There were some significant design changes that were done to the version 2.0 Blaster board in 2021. So if you're watching a review from like 2019, 2020, there are going to be some significant differences in the design of the Blaster board. So I'm going to go ahead and cover probably the two biggest ones. The first is the most obvious, which is that the battery backup is now here on the front side of the board with the rest of the chipset. The advantage to this is that it's now completely featureless and flat on the back of the N64 Blaster board, which will have another advantage that I will mention here in a little bit in the video. The second one is that you may be noticing, where on earth are the CIC pins? Well, guess what? They decided that that was too much bother and hassle, so they went ahead and made it so the board now automatically configures the correct corresponding CIC chip for you. So for those of you who aren't aware of what a CIC chip is, basically in a nutshell, that's the chip that sends information to the original unmodified N64 to say, hey, this is a real game. And they constantly send the information back and forth each other to verify that yes, they are legitimate. And believe it or not, so there is no such thing as popping in an N64 game, giving it the proper code, and then the N64 says, okay, you're good to go. It doesn't accept that. It constantly is in communication with that CIC chip to verify it's authentic. And it's only been within the last few years that there have been third-party versions that have been able to duplicate that. So hats off to Nintendo for having such a very secure system there, because it's only been within the last few years and literally 15 years after its production run ended where it ended up becoming available to other options. So what I'm going to do now is to go ahead and cover the reproduction that I'm going to actually be doing. So one of my favorite things to do is to go out and find the games that were unreleased for the N64, and one of which was Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Master Quest. Okay, so a lot of you are sitting there going, wait a second, you know, Ocarina of Time was a real game. There are plenty of them out there. I said, yes, there is, but there was never, the Master Quest version was never released for the N64. It was a limited run that ended up on a bonus disc for the GameCube, but was, once again, it had a very limited production run even for the GameCube, and once again was never released for the N64. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do today. And what I'm going to do is to go ahead and pause this, and I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys how easy it is to set this up and program it. So just give me a second here while I pause it. Okay, so real quick, this is the N64 Retro Blaster Programmer version 2.0, and this has not changed, whereas the Blaster board has. So, but this is still the same one that they've been producing for a few years now. And the great thing about the Retro Blaster Programmer is this is removable, and you can purchase adapters to do NES games, you can do SNES, you can do Sega Genesis, you can do Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, and as well, they will be having one coming up for the TurboGrafx 16. So, you're getting much more than just an N64 programmer when you order this thing. As I said, all you have to do is to order the adapters for the other ones, and you can pop this guy out, put them in, and then you can write those other systems. Now, the cool thing is these guys made it easy for you. They have a 5-volt and 3-volt selector there, depending on which system you're doing it for. By default, they will go ahead and set the switch for whichever version that you order. And of course, I'm doing the N64, so they had already set it to 3-volt. So you don't even have to mess with that. It's already in the correct position because they've already set it for you before they shipped it out to you. So really quick, they do have just a cord that comes with it here. You know, this is just, sorry, I'm trying to bring this in, just standard USB cord, and then this is the end, of course, that plugs into the programmer. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this guy in and bring up the software program real quick, and just give me a second. Okay, so real quick, when you plug this guy in, should see a little blue light come on. There it goes. Okay, so this is something that's really important. The only thing that they haven't managed, kind of idiot-proof on this system, as it were, is that they have not gone ahead and covered which direction, clearly specified which direction has to be aimed, because you have to have the board plugged in facing a certain direction, otherwise it will not register properly, and it's basically going to act like your computer can't even see this device. So really quick, the easiest way to remember it is that the battery and chipset always faces away from the USB programmer right here, okay, the USB port. All right, so one other thing to note, and this was mentioned actually by somebody else when I was looking through comments, they mentioned that when you first put in the blaster board, it's very difficult to get out, to the point where he felt like he almost had to break it to get it out, because it's a very snug fit. So an easy solution to that is you can go ahead and just put it in the cartridge case, and then you are in a position where you can just go ahead and pop it in like this. Okay? And so you've already got it hooked up to the blaster board with a cartridge case. Sorry, that should refocus, hopefully. There we go. All right. So anyways, that will go ahead and put it in like that. And so yeah, you can go ahead and do it that way. So for me, this makes it even easier, because then what I remember is that the label side right here, this blank label side, always faces towards you and away from the USB port on the back of the board. And then you've got it plugged in the right way. All right, so what you're going to need next, you are going to need this Retro Blaster program there. The good news is you don't have to update the firmware or do anything, because the latest firmware update was several months ago. So they've already programmed the blasters that are coming to you with the correct firmware. So you don't have to do anything except use this Retro Blaster software that's here. All right? And if you check on their website, they'll point you in the right direction for that. So go ahead and open this guy up. All right, now you're going to see this right here. You've got your different tabs there. You've got the one for the NES, the SNES, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, N64, which is of course what we're doing, Sega Genesis, and they even have the tab right here for the upcoming TurboGrafx-16 one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause this just for a sec. Okay, so we're resuming here, and what I'm going to show you is the different options. Now, if all you're doing is writing a fresh ROM, this literally could not be easier. Okay. This also does give you the option. This programmer is capable of doing your own, dump from a regular cartridge. So yes, even an OEM cartridge you could plug in here, and you could literally make your own ROM from it. So you've got it here, and you can also dump the game saves, whether it be flash RAM, EEPROM, SRAM. You just need to look up and see which type of game save it used and which format it used for that, and then you can go with that. They also have the option to, if you want to write your game saves to this, you can do it. So pretty slick in that respect, but for me, I'm always doing a fresh install. So it will, even if the board is blank and you've never written to it before, you have to go ahead and let it erase. It's just going to do it. It's effectively, it's its version of formatting. So so don't be surprised if you see that when you first do this. So for write ROM, you'll just go, okay, click write ROM, and it'll bring up some options here. I'm going to go ahead and find, there it is, right there. So that's going to be the file I'm going to select. Okay, so you'll see it's writing the mapper config done, erasing blaster. Now, the time that it takes does vary a little bit, so depending on what you're writing, I've seen it go as little as 5 minutes, but I've also seen it go all the way up to 13 to 15 minutes. So it really just depends on the file size, and as well, maybe taking a little extra time trying to figure out which, configuration it wants to put on there. So while I've got this here, I am going to bring this up. N64 or Retro Stage Blasters. One of the advantages that I mentioned earlier, I was going to discuss later, and here it is that the new versions will fit inside an OEM cartridge, okay? An OEM cartridge case. So that means that technically you can go out and find a donor cartridge for about $3 to $4, possibly less, in good condition, and you can go ahead and put in the Retro Blaster in there and use a regular OEM case. That way, honestly, it saves you a fair bit of money, because I did the math, and the ones that Retro Stage has available, you cannot get a gray case from them right now. I think black is the closest you can get to an authentic color from them. And the other thing is, of course, it's not going to have any labels, and it doesn't even have the protective metal plating. So by the time I did the math, it was like, for me to order 10 cases, it was like $83 with shipping. Conversely, to get 10 OEM cases, I think it cost me between like $36 and $37. So that's a pretty significant price savings, because then basically you can make a whole other reproduction with the savings there. So the other thing I'm going to go ahead and bring up is that there are some advantages and disadvantages to both of these formats. And, so the cons are that, the first one is that, unfortunately, even though it shows you here as far as, dumping flash RAM and writing flash RAM, you can dump flash RAM, I believe, but you cannot write flash RAM. Flash RAM and the one other one Pokemon Stadium uses, I'm trying to remember what I can't remember what the designation is, but yeah, unfortunately, so games like Paper Mario, Mega Man 64 are not compatible with this board as it sits right now. However, it does sound like that maybe that they are working on that for the future, so I would definitely keep an eye out on that for the future. And just go ahead, you can find information out there. There are sheets out there that will tell you what type of save function that it uses, whether it's EEPROM, whether it's SRAM, whether it's flash RAM, and which type of technology it uses for that. So EEPROM and SRAM, you're good to go, as well as the conventional, just saving to the memory card or Rumble Pack memory card combo. So, but just be aware, the biggest disadvantage to this is that, yes, you cannot do flash RAM games right now. So just be sure to double check that list before you do this. But, once again, we're only talking about a handful of titles. Virtually the rest of the library you can write to this thing. Now, another disadvantage is it will not do PAL format. The good news is that there are only 4 PAL format exclusives. One is a soccer game. There are a couple of indie racing simulator games. And then probably the one that most people are looking for, which is Taz Express. The good news is that there was an NTSC version that was unreleased known as Taz Express Proto, and yes, that is compatible with this. I can confirm that for sure. I actually do have a repro of Taz Express Proto, and it does work perfectly well on the N64 with no modifications. So the other one for the cons is that it is a bit expensive, excluding the one-time cost of the programmer. Between the cost of the blaster board, the cost of shipping, the cost of the case, even just the cheaper OEM case, as well as purchasing a reproduction label from Retro Stage. This one, you can save costs there if you're able to do the labels yourself. it ends up coming out between $38 and $39 shipped per repro. So realistically, you know, yeah, you're not going to want to do a whole library of these things. Realistically, they're best suited for, you know, like the games that I mentioned, the unreleased games, maybe the hacks, or maybe the other types of games that are out there. You know, the import games, like Japanese imports, which thankfully Japanese imports are NTSC compatible. So really the only difference between a US North American game and a Japanese game is literally the back of the cartridge. That's how simple it is. So in all other respects, they're totally compatible between the hardware. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this for a second. Okay, so that one actually set the record for me. 14 minutes and 23.98 seconds to write this one. And so it's just one of those things where, you know, it just really depends on the size of the game and what it is. So definitely a longer time than the other ones that I've done. But as you can see, it's done. So I guess we'll just pause the video for a second, and then we'll go test it out and see if it works. Okay, so we're going to try this out now. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. And there you have it. It appears to be working. So that is the Retro Stage Blaster, and you got to see it in action there, where it booted up with Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Master Quest Edition. And you know, as I said, it's just a very slick, very easy to use device. I highly recommend picking it up. If you're wondering how much the programmer costs, it is $52.50 for the N64 version, plus of course shipping. So the trick with this is that it really does pay to order, you know, them in a larger size quantity. If you can order the blaster boards in a quantity of 10 or more, you'll make the shipping costs negligible in terms of what you're spending per board. And anyways, I highly recommend this. This is, in my opinion, the best option out there if you want to be able to make your own reproductions with being able to have a physical copy, so that, you know, something that, you know, looks and feels just like the original. So I'm going to go ahead and put a sticker on the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time now. And those, if you're interested, I recommend RetroGameCases.com. They make really nice reproduction labels if you don't have the ability to make your own, and they run about $5 a piece. And that's all I've got, and thanks for watching.